Good evening, boys and girls. Are you ready for a story? Well, I am, and this story was told to my daughters a long time ago, and they got lost somewhere out there, and I've been trying to get it back, and I've tried a few times, and it hasn't worked, so I'm going to try this time, and let's see. Once upon a time, there was a little girl who lived in a very small house in an apartment block. She didn't live on the top. She lived near the top on the 22nd floor, and she had her own little room, which was very bright because it had two big windows, as the little room was on the corner of the apartment. And every day the sun shone brightly in that room, and every night in the girl's dreams she always had lots to do. And the special thing about this little girl's bedroom was that there was a tent. Not an ordinary tent that you would take outside, and not a waterproof one that you could go camping in. It was a tent that goes on a bed. You see, this country that the girl was staying in got quite cold. Not cold enough to have like radiators or boilers, but a little bit cold. And so the girls, Mummy and Daddy, bought a tent for the bed. It was a very nice one. It was pink and cream, and it had some letters on it, which said, "I love you to the moon and back," or something like that. And this was a very special tent, because every night when the little girl's daddy would lie down next to her and tell her a story, the tent listened in. And every night, as the daddy told the girl another story, the tent would listen and watch as the girl drifted off to sleep. And every night, when the girl had drifted off to sleep, the daddy gave her a kiss on the head and said, "Good night, sweet dreams," and he went off to have his dinner. The tent would still be there, watching and listening, and he could see the girl dreaming. And he could see the girl's dreams were all colourful and painted by the stories that her daddy had told her. This was the favourite time of the tent. The tent couldn't move, obviously, because it was a tent, and it had to be zipped up and zipped down and folded in and folded out and washed and ironed, and he didn't really like that bit. He liked watching the girl's dreams. It didn't happen every night because Daddy was sometimes busy, but especially on the weekends and some nights and always during the holidays, Daddy would tell the most fantastic stories, and the tent was very, very impressed. The tent listened and watched, and in the girl's dreams and in her daddy's stories, there was tears and laughter and scary bits and terrible bits. And the tent came to realize, and the tent came to want to be a teacher. He thought, how wonderful is it for a daddy to tell stories to his daughter, and for the daughter, for the little girl, to have all these fantastic dreams. The tent had thought about this for a very, very long time, and he'd seen how the girl had grown up from a little baby, when she was like 1 or 2, up until like a nice 7 or 8-year-old, and that all these stories that Daddy had told her had changed her, and they'd impacted her, and that she'd become this girl who was coloured by the stories and the dreams of all these nights with Daddy stories. And so the tent decided, I want to be a teacher. But how can a tent be a teacher when it's just a tent and it can't even talk? And anyway, the girl and Daddy didn't even know the tent could listen and watch the dreams. So what was it going to do? Well, being a tent, it just had to stay there on the bed. During the summer times, it would get packed up in a bag because it was too hot to have a tent. and it would really miss the boy and the daddy and the girl, and sometimes it would cry. But every day during the winter times, the daddy would tell a story. The tent was very exciting, and he got more and more passionate about becoming a teacher. But how could he do it? Because it's just a tent. And then, one night, Daddy told a story about a place where all these little kids go during the day. About a place called a school. And the tent found out that the school is a big building where all the children come in and listen and speak and learn. And the tent got a good idea. The tent didn't want to be a teacher because it couldn't be a teacher. But the tent decided it wanted to be a school. It wanted to be a big tent, like the size of a school, where it could watch and listen and see not one girl, but hundreds of boys and girls, and how the teachers were helping them to have pictures and images and stories in their mind. How fantastic would that be, thought the tent. And so, the tent set itself the target. It set its mind on becoming a school where all the little boys and girls would learn from teachers, and it was looking forward to seeing all the pictures and images and watching these boys and girls grow up. But how could how could a bed tent become a school? Well, he didn't know it was impossible, and he didn't know it was a he. I guess it's an it. But because of Daddy's stories, he thought that anything could be possible, even a tent turning into a school. But then something terrible happened. As something terrible usually happens in a story. The family, the boy, the family, the girl and the mummy and daddy moved to another house. And while they were getting the packaging and removals were packing all the belongings up, the tent got lost. When they moved to their house, which was a house now, not an apartment, it had like a nice big garden. As they were unpacking the boxes, the mummy said, "Where's your tent?" And the girl couldn't find it. And after they'd unpacked all the boxes and they'd thrown out all the cardboard bits and cleaned the house, they had everything except the tent. The girl started to cry, but the girl didn't cry as much as the tent was crying, because it could not see how it was going to get back to the bed. What had happened was, the removal people who usually come and pack up all the boxes for such a move had packed it into a different truck, and it was now on its way across the country somewhere else. And what's worse is the tent had actually fallen off this truck and was now stuck by the side of the road, wrapped up in its bag, all squeezed up, and it started to rain and pour, and the tent thought to itself, "Oh my dear, how can it get worse than this?" Well, it couldn't get any worse than this, could it? But then again, something magical happened, as something magical always happens after something terrible happens, and along came the tent's fairy godmother. It saw the tent was crying, and it came down, and it opened up the tent and said, "Hello, tent. What are you doing here? You should be on the bed of that little girl in the other side of the country." "I know, but I think I got put in the wrong truck and then I fell off, and now I'm here soaking wet. So what are you going to do about it, please?" "Well, first of all, let me send you back to the girl." And the fairy godmother clicked her heels, spun around, and with a star on top of a stick, she went abracadabra and with a sparkling star, the tent was back in the girl's house. Now, obviously, a tent couldn't just appear in the girl's bedroom because, well, especially at night time, she might have a heart attack or something silly, and her mom and dad would be like, where did that tent come from? Because you're just a little girl and you can't even put up a tent like this. And they might think that some burglar had been in and actually stolen something, or not maybe put a tent there, and so they might get a bit worried and they might not like the house because it might have been a ghost. And so the fairy godmother was aware of this, and so she didn't just put it back on the bed. She left it in the garden, all wrapped up. And in the morning, I think it was a Saturday, the girl opened up her new curtains in a new house and looked down onto the new garden of green grass, and there, in the middle of the garden, pointing right in the direction of the house, was her pink and cream tent, just laying there. It was a bit dirty because it had been put on the wrong truck and it had dropped off, fallen off, and it had been rained on and was on the side of the road. But the girl knew it was a tent, and so she ran downstairs, opened up the door, ran straight across the garden in her bare feet. Her feet got wet because of the morning dew on the grass. She picked up the tent, put it under her arms, and ran straight into the kitchen to show her mum. Mum, look at this! It's our new tent! Maybe the people who packed our things just forgot it as they were bringing it in. Wow! But look at the state of it. Let's wash it first and we'll have it on your bed tomorrow. And so that day, the mum washed the tent and hung it out. And she hung it out on the washing line in the new back garden on the other side from where the tent was found. And to dry it out, the mum actually put it up, because the weather was nice, and she put it up in the garden. And that day, as it was getting dry, the girls saw the sunshine shining in the tent, and thought this would be a great day for a little picnic with my friends. And as the mom and dad had invited all their friends for a housewarming party, their friends' kids, who were always and also the little girl's friends, had a tea party in the tent. Now this was the first time the tent had had more than one little girl inside, talking and playing and chatting, and, well, it was kind of like a school. The kids were playing, the tent could listen and see, and actually, because it was such a nice day, and the mummy and daddy were having such a good time with their friends, they said, why don't you have a little nap in your tent? And so the girl and 3 little friends got their blankets and pillows from the house, and as the tent was almost dry, they slept for about 47 minutes, just enough time to have a little bit of a dream, and the tent got a little bit of a taste of all these little girls dreaming about wonderful things. Today they were dreaming about a tea party and a new house, and the little girl dreamt about her old house and daddy's stories, and the tent was even more determined to try and become a school. Just a few days ago it was stuck on the side of a road, being rained on and splashed on, and now it was actually outside with little boys and girls in it, dreaming and playing. Well, if you can go from that to there, you can go from there to a school. And so the tent called back the fairy godmother, and being a fairy godmother, nobody else could see it apart from the tent. That's the thing about your fairy godmother. Nobody can see them apart from you, and it's special to you. And so the tent, who could talk to its godmother, fairy godmother, but nobody else could hear, started to have a nice conversation with it as the girls and the boys were sleeping. And he said, listen, I've got a deal. I want to be a school. What can you do for me? And the fairy godmother had a bit of a think, and she saw that next to the house there was a little patch of land, kind of like, I think, waiting to be built on or something like that. And then next to that was another house. And so the fairy godmother said, why don't I put you in that bit of land and make you into a school? And the tent said, sounds like a plan. And so the fairy godmother clicked her heels again, waved a star on the end of a stick, and all these magic splashy things came out. And the tent grew bigger and bigger and bigger, and landed in the field, the bit of land next to the house. Well, what was really funny was the tent that the girls were sleeping in stayed the same. And the tent that was in the next bit of land was a big tent that looked bigger than the small one. So now it had become 2 tents. Not sure if that's a good part of the story, but anyway. And so when the girls woke up, they looked outside and they saw a big pink and cream tent. And they could not believe their eyes, because written on it in huge big letters was, I love you to the moon and back.